I walked into the strategy meeting, and there she was. In my chair. Running the meeting I was supposed to lead. She had her laptop open, a branded mug in hand, and was clicking through slides like she owned the place. My name wasn't on the agenda. Hers was. "Morning, everyone," she said, flashing that perfect, practiced smile she always wore like lipstick. "Before we dive in, quick update on the new client onboarding strategy. I reworked the pipeline this weekend, and I think you'll find the numbers persuasive." I stood frozen in the doorway, laptop bag still on my shoulder. Half the team looked up, half looked down, pretending not to see me, pretending this wasn't weird. I forced a smile, walked to the corner of the room, and took the only seat left. Not one person moved. Not even my dad. And just like that, my future at Warner and Company slipped right out from under me. Let me back up. My name's Rachel Warner. I'm 32. I've worked at my family's company since I was 17, starting in the warehouse, loading shipments, learning supply chains, doing vendor relations by 20, leading operations by 27. I've poured everything into this business. Missed birthdays, skipped vacations, even put off relationships because this was supposed to be mine. My inheritance. My identity. I knew I was going to take over after my dad retired. Everyone knew. He'd been grooming me for years. Then Danny came back. Danielle Warner. My cousin. 5 years younger. Gorgeous, effervescent, and just so effortlessly likable it hurts. She has this way of tilting her head when she talks to men that makes them lean in, laugh harder, nod like she's just solved world hunger. She wears perfume that smells like ambition and brunch reservations. She floated from one career to another, real estate, lifestyle branding, some influencer stint in Austin, but nothing stuck. So when she showed up back in town last spring and my dad said she was looking to find her footing, I thought, fine. Let her do admin work for a while. Let her see what real work feels like. Instead, he let her shadow me. At first, it was subtle. She'd pop into meetings just to learn. Bring coffee to the office with extra for the board members. Offer a couple ideas during brainstorming. Then I started noticing changes. She'd giggle when one of the senior partners made a corny joke. Clap lightly when someone mentioned quarterly goals. One time, she interrupted me mid-presentation to ask, "Do we have any data on TikTok conversions for the 25 to 40 segment?" with that doe-eyed sincerity that makes men feel brilliant. My dad smiled like she'd just invented marketing. The week before the Tuesday meeting, she cornered me in the break room. "Hey, Rach," she said, leaning against the counter with a LaCroix in hand. "Just wanted to say how grateful I am you're letting me learn so much. You've really built something here. I hope I'm not stepping on your toes." I blinked. "Why would you be stepping on my toes?" She smiled again, slow and warm. "Oh, no reason. People just seem really excited lately. I guess I'm kind of the new blood, huh?" The day after that meeting, my dad called me into his office. He wouldn't even look at me at first. Just kept pretending to read emails. "I'm not going to sugarcoat it," he said eventually. "Danny's impressed a lot of people. The board's energized. There's been chatter about refreshing the brand, evolving the leadership." I stared at him. "What are you saying?" He sighed, still not looking at me. "It's time we start transitioning. A more forward-facing structure. You've done amazing work, no one's questioning that, but we're entering a new phase. And Danny brings something different." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, feeling the air leave my lungs. He kept talking. "I think a sabbatical might be good for you. Recharge. Get some space. You'll always have a place here." I swallowed hard. "You're replacing me." He finally looked at me. "We're evolving the company." That night, I went home, put my keys on the hook, and stood in my kitchen like a ghost. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I just stood there. At some point, I went to grab a glass of water, and my hand brushed the mug my assistant had given me last Christmas, white ceramic with gold lettering that said Boss Energy. It slipped from my fingers, hit the floor, and shattered into 4 clean pieces. I stared at it for 10 minutes before I moved. Not crying. Not screaming. Just staring. Because that mug? That was the last thing in my life that still made me feel like I belonged somewhere. I swept it up eventually. Carefully. Like it mattered. The next morning, Danny posted a photo to LinkedIn. She was standing in the executive suite, my office, holding a branded pen and beaming like a damn toothpaste ad. Honored to step into a new chapter at Warner and Company. Grateful for the trust, excited for the future. Not a single mention of me. No tribute. No transition. No, couldn't have done this without my cousin Rachel. I was gone like I never existed. My inbox filled with emails congratulating her. Aunt Lisa texted me, isn't Danny doing amazing? You must be so proud of her. Someone else said, finally, some fresh energy at the company. Fresh energy. You know what I was? Tired energy. Earned energy. Loyal energy. The kind that doesn't sparkle in a blazer, but keeps everything running. But none of that mattered. Not when Danny walked in with a smile, a silk blouse, and a pitch deck that someone probably helped her build. I didn't show up to work the rest of the week. I told HR I needed time. They didn't push. My phone stayed face down. My laptop stayed shut. On Sunday, my dad texted, "Let me know when you're ready to talk." I never answered. That night, I stood by my window with a glass of wine, watching the streetlights flicker on. I could hear laughter from a neighbor's house, the sound of silverware clinking. And I realized something. I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. But something cracked open inside me that night, and I knew I wouldn't stay quiet forever. The week after I disappeared from the company, I started waking up at 3:17 a.m. almost every night. No alarm. No dreams. Just that specific, stupid time, like my body had decided it needed a ritual. I'd stand in the kitchen in my oversized sweatshirt, barefoot on cold tile, and drink water straight from the faucet. Everything would be silent except the hum of the fridge and the occasional groan from the old pipes. I stopped turning on the lights. I liked the dark. It wasn't grief exactly, or anger, or even exhaustion. It was something deeper. Like I had hollowed out completely. Not dead. Just paused. I didn't return calls. I didn't open company emails. I didn't show up to the board check-in I was still technically listed on. When HR sent over my formal sabbatical paperwork with a chipper subject line, "Time to reconnect with you," I didn't even blink. I signed it and never sent it back. Let them assume I was healing or resting or prioritizing myself. Whatever buzzword they were passing around the office that week. I didn't care. But that didn't mean I wasn't watching. Every morning, I'd sit in front of my laptop, screen dimmed, volume off, and scroll. Danny was everywhere. Her LinkedIn page was a slow-moving train wreck dressed as a lifestyle blog. A new banner image with pastel tones. A headshot that looked like it belonged in a tech startup's IPO filing. And captions, always these nauseating captions. Leadership is about legacy. Grateful to be walking this path with humility and fire. Earned, not given. Proud to carry the Warner name forward. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee when she posted that last one. Earned? Danny couldn't earn her way through a punch card sandwich shop, let alone a family business she hadn't lifted a damn finger to build. But there she was, shining like a diamond in a crown I polished for years. I took a screenshot of the post. Not to share. Just to keep. Like a receipt. The house grew quieter by the day. I left the blinds closed. I didn't turn on the TV. The only sound came from my espresso machine and the occasional podcast I played to pretend someone was speaking to me. One night, I reheated soup, sat on the couch, and stared at the small crack in the tile floor near my dining room. I'd stepped over that crack every day for 8 years. Never noticed it until now. It felt like a metaphor. By Thursday, the company sent a mass email announcing a new era of leadership. It was full of bright language and awkward spacing and ended with a quote from Danny about building forward. No mention of me. Not even a hollow thanks for my years of service. I stared at it for exactly 8 seconds, then hit delete. Later that night, while going through my backup hard drive for a different reason, I created a folder. Nothing major. Just a single folder on my desktop titled, Transition Notes. It was empty at first. But the file name said everything I wasn't ready to say out loud. That was the first breadcrumb. The next morning, I went to the gym. It had been almost a year, maybe longer, since I'd walked through those glass doors. But the smell of sweat, rubber, and industrial cleaning products still hit the same. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't wear cute matching leggings. I just walked to the squat rack in the corner, the one no one uses because it's a little crooked, and started lifting like I had something to bury in the concrete floor. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. But I did feel something crack open again in my chest when I held that first barbell. That kind of pressure, the good kind, the kind you choose, it reminded me I was still strong. Still here. Just hidden. 2 days later, I ran into Melissa from the marketing team. She spotted me in the grocery store, standing under the cold fluorescent lights near the yogurt aisle. I was wearing an oversized hoodie and hadn't washed my hair in 3 days. She looked unsure whether to wave or duck. "Hey," she said carefully, pushing her cart closer. I wasn't sure if. "I mean, we haven't really." "Yeah," I replied. "I've been laying low." She nodded, her eyes darting to the Chobani shelf like it might save her. "Danny said you were stepping back for mental clarity or something." "Good for you. You deserve the break." "Did she really say that?" Melissa winced. "Something like that. She also mentioned you were planning to write a book." That was new. I gave a small laugh, sharp, humorless. Must have been ghostwritten. Melissa leaned in, lowering her voice. "I'll be honest. It's weird without you. The meetings are very curated now." "Curated?" I echoed. "Like, filtered. Pretty. But no one really knows what's going on anymore." That stuck with me. Filtered. That was Danny's favorite style of leadership, aesthetic over substance. You could run the place into the ground as long as you used the right font in the deck. The next week, I started a part-time consulting contract with a small artisan workshop on the other side of town. No press, no announcements. I didn't use my full name. They didn't ask where I came from. All they cared about was the fact that I knew how to optimize their supply chain and renegotiate material costs. I sat in their dusty little warehouse most afternoons, sipping burnt coffee and watching sawdust settle in streaks of sunlight. The place smelled like pine and metal. The floors creaked. The heat was inconsistent. It was perfect. When the founder, Joan, asked why someone with my background would want to work there, I told her I liked watching things get built without anyone noticing. She nodded like she understood. Sometimes I stayed after hours, sitting on a folding chair with my notebook open, scribbling down names. Not people. Just vendors. Accounts. Small details. But Danny's name sat quietly at the top of the margin every time. Then the text came. I was folding laundry when it lit up on my screen. A number I hadn't seen in weeks. "Danny. Hey you. Just saw your name in the summit program. Can't wait to see you there. We should totally catch up," smiley face. It was the kind of message that reads sweet but lands sour. Patronizing. Planted. Like she needed me to show up just so she could step on my neck in public. Or worse, smile like nothing had happened. I stared at it for a full minute, then turned my phone face down on the couch and kept folding. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. But I did open my laptop. In that little folder on my desktop, I added 2 new files, summit_boardlist and wco_media_release draft. And then I saved a contact I hadn't used in 3 years. Someone Danny didn't even know I still talked to. I stopped going to family dinners. I missed my aunt's birthday brunch. I skipped my godson's school recital and didn't apologize. People stopped asking questions after a while. The silence did the work for them. They assumed I was still broken. That I was off licking my wounds somewhere with a journal and a bottle of wine. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't hiding, I was listening. And what I heard was cracks. Whispers from people still on the inside. Quiet complaints. Meetings being rescheduled without notice. A board member asking, "Didn't we already try this strategy 2 years ago?" Someone else noting that a key supplier's name was misspelled in the new marketing packet. Little things. But little things become big things when the wrong person is in charge. The last time I saw my father was at the bank. I'd walked in to deposit a check and there he was, dressed in his usual wool coat, talking to the branch manager like he was still a man of control. He didn't notice me at first, but when he did, his smile froze halfway. "Rachel," he said, too brightly. "I didn't know you still used this branch." "I do," I replied. "Still local." He hesitated, like he wanted to ask something, maybe if I was okay, maybe if I was planning to come back. But he didn't. He just gave a weak nod and said, "Danny's doing well." I met his eyes. "For now." He blinked, caught off guard. I stepped past him, handed my check to the teller, and didn't look back. A week later, I was added, without permission, to the State Commerce Summit's event program. Page 6. Panel 3. Legacy versus Innovation, Finding the Balance in Family Business. Danny was listed as a featured speaker. I was listed as former director, Warner and Company. No title. No affiliation. Just that word, former. And that's when I stopped waiting. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 4 years. Someone whose business Danny had tanked during her real estate phase by stealing a lead and ghosting the buyer. He picked up on the second ring. When I introduced myself, he paused for a long moment before saying, "Took you long enough." I smiled. "You still keep records?" "I keep everything." "Good. I'm going to need copies." People always assume silence means surrender. But I wasn't quiet because I was afraid. I was quiet because I was loading the gun. 3 days before the summit, I changed my LinkedIn headline. Just one quiet line, "Former director at Warner and Company, currently watching closely." I didn't post it. I didn't explain it. I just let the algorithm do what it does best, whisper. By the next morning, I had 23 messages in my inbox and 3 connection requests from reporters I hadn't spoken to since our Series B press tour. I ignored them all. But I made sure to accept one request, from a junior writer at a trade publication Danny once brushed off during a roundtable, dismissing him with a sugary circle back, "Okay," that everyone in the room pretended not to hear. That same afternoon, Warner's internal marketing thread was flooded with chatter about a leaked draft. Someone had anonymously forwarded a 2-year-old pitch deck, my deck, with Danny's name now credited at the bottom. No one said it outright, but the metadata told the truth. I didn't leak it. But I did remind someone who had access to it, and who never forgot how she stole their distribution pitch and pitched it as her own in front of the board. Some people hold grudges. Some people organize them alphabetically. That was my first move. Quiet. Untraceable. But it started the spiral. At the summit reception, the air was thick with recycled ambition and expensive perfume. The kind of room where people talk in ellipses and eye contact lasts just long enough to scan your badge. I wore navy. No name tag. I wasn't on any list, but the woman at the check-in desk recognized me. I didn't correct her when she said, "Oh. Glad you're back." I just smiled, signed the waiver, and walked into the room like I still belonged there. And honestly? I did. The lighting was cool-toned and unforgiving, casting harsh shadows on faces that smiled too wide. Danny stood near the center, polished within an inch of her life in a fuchsia blazer that looked more like branding than fabric. Her laugh rang out like she had rehearsed it. She hadn't seen me yet. But others had. A few heads turned. One woman from procurement narrowed her eyes. A former project manager raised his glass in the kind of hesitant toast you give someone whose obituary you accidentally read. I nodded. Didn't stop. When Danny finally noticed me, it wasn't immediate. It took her a second to recognize the shape of the threat. But once she did, her expression stuttered. Her smile froze, mid-lift. She blinked twice, too fast, then smoothed her face like fixing a spreadsheet. "Rachel," she said, stepping forward. "I didn't know you were coming." I let my smile spread slowly. "Didn't you?" She tilted her head, feigning curiosity. "Well, it's always good to see you. Everyone's missed you." "I'm sure they have. Especially now." Her eyes flicked to the circle of people behind her. She laughed, too loudly. "Well, I've just been trying to keep things moving." I noticed. It's like watching someone juggle knives blindfolded. Impressive. Dangerous. She blinked. "You always did have a flair for metaphors. And you always did have a flair for theft." That one landed. She recovered quickly, but not completely. Her mouth twitched. Someone called her name behind her. She turned to wave, too eagerly. "We should catch up later," she said, already stepping away. "Why wait?" She didn't answer. Just vanished into the cluster of suits and applause. The morning of the panel, the ballroom was packed. I took a seat near the middle aisle, perfectly positioned for the livestream camera to catch the back of my head every time the moderator scanned the crowd. Danny was last on the docket. The panel was titled "Legacy to Leadership, Innovating Family Business Models." Cute. She took the stage like she was walking a TED Talk runway, confident, smooth, pre-scripted. But I could see the signs. The tension in her shoulders. The too fast pacing of her first sentence. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her voice was warm, but her fingers gripped the edge of the podium like she was bracing for impact. And then it happened. A panelist, one of the moderators from an HR tech firm, leaned into his mic and asked, "What would you say is the biggest innovation you've personally led at Warner since taking over?" She smiled, too wide. "We've pivoted toward a more modern communication structure, rebranding the internal narrative and—" "Right," he cut in gently. "But can you give a specific example? Something you initiated?" A pause. A full, dead second. Someone coughed in the back. Danny opened her mouth. Closed it. "Finally," she said, "I restructured our bi-weekly goal alignment format." There was a beat of silence before the panelist nodded politely and moved on. No one laughed. No one scoffed. But I saw 3 people in the front row exchange glances. It was the kind of moment that didn't go viral, but would be remembered in recaps. "Nothing behind the curtain," they'd say. And behind them, I sat perfectly still. I hadn't told the panelist to ask that. But I'd had coffee with his chief of staff the week before. I'd told her, casually, about the difference between leading and inheriting. I'd smiled when she said, "We've been trying to vet more deeply this year." And I may have emailed her the summit's panel packet with Danny's name circled and the words "optics versus ownership" in the subject line. The question wasn't mine. The setup was. In the hallway between panels, I stopped for coffee. The barista handed it over with a small smirk. "On the house. It's good to see you back." I didn't ask how he knew me. I took the coffee and stood near the escalator, listening. Behind me, two women in HR blazers murmured, just loud enough. She froze on the simplest question. She looked like she wanted to cry. I heard Rachel's in the room. That last one made my smile tug slightly. I didn't turn around. Later, in the ladies' room, I overheard a conversation from behind the stall. Her deck looked familiar. What do you mean? Like. I think I saw half of those slides in a pitch 2 years ago. But it had someone else's name. You sure? No. But I wouldn't bet against it. When I stepped out of the stall, I caught their eyes in the mirror. I didn't say a word. I just washed my hands, slow and precise. Then, as I pulled the paper towel from the dispenser, I said, "It's funny, isn't it? The way credit works. So portable." They didn't respond. They just watched me walk out. Back in the ballroom, the afternoon keynotes began. Dani had disappeared. Her seat sat empty on the stage. A staffer whispered something to a moderator. Then nothing. A few minutes later, someone posted a photo to Twitter, a shot of Dani, back turned, walking quickly through the hallway. The caption read, "Rough Q&A. That's what happens when you decorate an empire you didn't build." I didn't retweet it. But I did send the link to a former board member with the words, "Hope you're enjoying the rebrand." He replied with a single period. Then nothing else. That night, I walked into the press lounge. No cameras. Just laptops, wires, tired reporters half living on Red Bull and cheese cubes. I wore my badge now. Let it hang. One woman from an industry podcast flagged me down. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Off the record?" "I'm not giving a statement." "Doesn't have to be formal," she said. "We're just noticing some inconsistencies." I smiled. Then maybe it's time someone took a closer look. And I dropped a slim manila folder onto her table. Not everything. Just one document. Enough to raise a question. Enough to start a search. Back at home, I updated the folder on my desktop. I renamed it Last Phase. Inside were copies of everything. The conflict of interest memo Dani ignored. The email where she approved a fake RFP vendor. The invoice that double-billed a client for a dinner she never attended. And one short video, just 11 seconds, of her telling the office manager to bury a scheduling mistake by massaging the timestamp. I hadn't sent any of it. Yet. Her downfall started with a typo. It'll end with a headline. I hovered over the send button for 12 minutes. The folder had taken weeks to build, though, truthfully, the evidence had been in plain sight for longer than anyone cared to admit. Emails that didn't match calendar events. Internal approvals signed twice under different names. A pitch deck with metadata that hadn't been scrubbed. Slack messages archived and recovered, showing creative rounding of client numbers. I didn't rush it. I arranged each file like a curator, not a whistleblower. Not everything she'd done was unethical, but enough of it was just wrong enough to raise questions. And sometimes, that's all you need. Questions. I read through the email one last time. No dramatic monologue. No venom. Just the facts. To Warner and Company. Board of Directors. CC, Legal, External Compliance, Ethics Officer. BCC, redacted. Subject, concerns regarding executive oversight. Then I clicked. And just like that, it was no longer mine to carry. I closed the laptop. Sat back in the quiet. For the first time in months, my shoulders didn't ache. And when I lay in bed that night, I read the article again, the one Dani had been featured in back in March, when she'd been quoted saying, "In legacy businesses, it's not about who gets there first, it's about who finishes stronger." I didn't laugh. But I did sleep. All the way through. First time in 7 months. The fallout didn't come as a storm. There were no headlines. No Twitter trends. No one yelling on CNBC about Warner's collapse. It was quieter than that. At first, it was just a missing name from the Monday press release. Then, her profile disappeared from the executive page, replaced with a placeholder photo and a note that read, "Interim leadership review in progress." By Wednesday, a few whispers made their way to industry Slack channels. By Friday, I received a message from a former colleague I hadn't spoken to since the holiday party 2 years ago. Just one line. "She's out." We all knew. But now, it's official. No signature. No emojis. Just confirmation. I didn't reply. What no one saw, what no one except maybe 2 or 3 people would ever know, was how carefully the tipping point had been orchestrated. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't frame her. I just built the room, turned on the lights, and waited for people to look around. I'd known the exact moment to move. It was when Dani started believing her own narrative, when she forgot the pitch deck she stole had revision notes in the footer, in my handwriting. When she emailed a vendor pretending to negotiate but left the old approval chain attached. When she reposted my exact quote from a 2022 panel and attributed it to herself. It was always going to be small things. Reputation never shatters in a bang. It erodes. The board called an emergency meeting under the banner of alignment restructuring. Dani wasn't invited. Or maybe she declined. Either way, she didn't show. 2 weeks later, a quiet internal announcement was sent to staff: Dani Warner will be stepping away to pursue new opportunities. No thank you. No farewell post. Just the digital equivalent of a shrug. But what I'll remember most wasn't the email. It was the meeting that never made it into the press. It was late afternoon, and I was back in my old neighborhood for a quick errand. I ducked into the same corner cafe I used to take interns to during their first week, small place, good espresso, no Wi-Fi. I ordered, took a seat, opened my laptop. I wasn't expecting anything. And then, there she was. Dani. Standing in line. Alone. Her hair was still styled perfectly, but her blazer hung looser than I remembered. There were faint shadows under her eyes, like sleep had become optional. Her hands fidgeted while she waited for the barista to finish. She wasn't holding her phone, which meant she wasn't expecting a call. When she finally turned and saw me, there was a second, just one, where she flinched. Like someone seeing a reflection they didn't recognize. Then she walked over. She didn't ask to sit. She just stood, coffee clutched in both hands, jaw locked. "You did this," she said, voice flat. I looked up slowly, closed my laptop without rush. I revealed what was already there. "You know how hard I worked." "Yes," I said. "At performance. At optics. At curating an image. You were very good at it. Until the facts caught up." Her mouth tightened, and for a moment I saw it, the slip. The woman who'd always known she wasn't ready for the seat she stole. The version of her who copied to survive, not to lead. "They wanted me," she whispered. "Not just because I looked better on the website. They liked me. I was the future." "You were convenient," I said. "They wanted a story. You gave them one." She took a shaky breath. Her hands trembled slightly when she gripped the paper cup. And now that I was looking closely, I saw it. One heel was scuffed, the polish on her left thumbnail chipped, and beneath the perfect makeup, her expression flickered. "Are you going back?" she asked, not hiding the edge in her voice. "No." "Then why?" I stood. "Because I wanted her to look up at me. Because you didn't just take a role. You took credit. You took trust. And you took it like it was owed to you." She blinked. "And no one ever told you no," I added. Then I leaned down just slightly. "But I did." Uncle Mark called a week after the article dropped. His voice was careful, over-enunciated like someone doing damage control. "We'd like to talk, Rachel. There's opportunity. Some of the board believes it's time for a correction. That maybe we moved too fast. I let the silence stretch. You'd be coming back in a leadership role. Not just operations. We want a rebuild. And frankly, no one understands the infrastructure like you do. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no. Not yet. I'll consider it, I said. On 2 conditions. Of course, he said, eager now. Anything. First, full visibility into restructuring decisions. Second, I bring my own team. Done, he said too quickly. He had no idea I'd already recruited 3 of the smartest people I knew from the artisan firm I'd helped scale during my quiet months. 2 of them had turned down Warner's recruiter years ago. Now they worked with me. By choice. I didn't post anything. Not about Danny. Not about Warner. But I noticed something. Every time someone Googled the summit now, the auto-suggestion listed Danny Warner. Ethics concern. Warner Company restructuring. Rachel T. Not Director Rachel. Not Danny's cousin. Just me. The last scene I'll give you is this. A month after everything, I'm sitting on my balcony, late evening, tea in hand. A notification buzzes on my phone, an article from a mid-tier outlet titled, "When Charm Isn't Enough, Why Competence Still Wins." I tap it open. Scroll halfway down. And there's a pull quote from someone anonymous, but clearly inside. She looked the part. But the person who built it didn't need applause. She just needed time. I didn't write that. Didn't feed it. But someone remembered. The funny thing about revenge? It's not the act itself. It's the clarity afterward. That moment when no one has to ask what happened, because they already know. I never yelled. I never threatened. I didn't need to. I waited until the applause faded, until the house she stole started to creak under its own weight. Then I handed everyone the blueprint. And watched from the sidewalk, while it collapsed.